Hi everybody. How you doing? My dad, the sociopath. Everything that I talk about here from my past and my history is my attempt to be in service to the community, to guys. I also get emails from many women who have resonated with what I've discussed, and that's my only hope. I'm not looking for sympathy or anything, nor am I looking to get revenge against, my family or parents or anything like that. But this is how I derive meaning from these experiences that are otherwise and still are very painful and very difficult. Otherwise, I feel like they serve no purpose. So while I feel that I've healed from a lot of it and made a lot of progress and continue to, if I don't talk about these issues and share them with the world and whoever, those few people who might be listening, hopefully it'll be many, but who knows, then there's just no meaning to it. Then it's just like in the past, but it's meaningless suffering that can't be of value to anybody else. When I started working with some guys in my coaching practice, I was really amazed to hear stories that were just like mine. Like, dad is absent or otherwise checked out or worse, and that causes all these problems. And now, I realized I'm going to take a sip of coffee, so forgive the noise. But I need my coffee. So there is something worse than growing up without a dad. And that is having a dad that was abusive, or like if you had one like mine, that's worse because, you'll be very confused about what it means to be a man, and being raised by a mom is kind of bad in its own right, and you'll miss out on initiation and stuff. But if your dad was like mine, he deliberately made an effort to undermine me, deliberately made every effort to make sure that I knew that I was a runt, that I was not worthy of his interest or affection, and worse, he did everything he could to belittle me, put me down, made sure I felt inferior. And I've been told by a couple therapists that this is where the Oedipus thing comes into play, because, the Oedipal mother looks to her sons sometimes to fill in the emotional gaps where she's not getting those companionship needs met by her adult partner. So my dad was like jealous, and there's this jealousy between the father and the closeness that I had with his wife, my mom, that he didn't have. So that's really messed up, right? Like, that's not the way things are normally supposed to be. And if there were some gap in their relationship, that they should work to resolve them. But that's something that is always lacking in these dysfunctional households, is that there is not enough awareness and there's not enough humility to seek help, right? That's not present, because that would be an admission of guilt or imperfection on behalf of parents that are many times narcissistic. So both of my parents were narcissists. My dad's a hot narcissist, so he's was very hot-headed, very brash, very aggressive, could do no wrong, and also a sociopath, which I'll get into in a minute. My mom is also a narcissist. She's a cold narcissist, a depressive narcissist, where, that's how she gets attention, right? The depressive narcissist, how do I get attention? How do I get the world to revolve around me? Is by being sad and by falling apart so other people can take care of me. My therapist gave me a sheet on a piece of paper. It was signs of unhealthy boundaries, and one of those was falling apart to be taken care of. She does that a lot. Telling all, that was one of the things that she demanded of me, was like heart-to-heart talks, having this shared emotional and mental reality that they demand of you. So, they're both narcissists, and those two polarities of the spectrum created that codependency. So my dad is a sociopath. Sociopaths don't feel empathy properly. So he would, when I was growing up, he would say some very cruel things, some very mean things, and sometimes in a moment of courage or crying, I'd tell him or my brother, that really hurt me when you said that. You called me worthless or whatever. And he'd just say, I never said that. And we'd be crying, yes, you did. Yes, you did. And he did. Like, for example, you're worthless. You'll never amount to anything. Okay. That made me, I cried. That made me sad. Well, I never said that. I never said that. It reminded me kind of like Dick Cheney. Like he used to pull those shticks. Like, I never said that. And so that's gaslighting. The gaslighting is rewriting history. If I'm a sociopath, if I can just convince you, if I can get you to back down, then I can supplant reality with my own made-up reality. The sociopath doesn't believe it. It's just a contest to them. If they can get you to believe it, then the competition has been won, and they don't need to apologize. So all this is really to cover up for their own really weak ego, and they can't ever be wrong, can't learn anything either. That was one interesting trait that I learned, was that narcissist / sociopath, because I believe those are kind of, just me personally, I believe those are two things in the similar spectrum. They're very closely related. So my dad had like one failed pattern with business and money after the other, and continued to do it. Did it well into his 70s because they can't learn. He made a large amount of money once, a couple $1 million, and I begged him, because he was very bad with money, still is. I begged him, Dad, please, it's okay if you're not good with money. Please just go get help. Go see a fee-based financial planner and have them help you create a retirement plan. And couldn't do it, and relive those same old mistakes, because you can't seek advice. That's too much of a blow to their narcissism. But the gaslighting was like that, and couldn't apologize and would rewrite history. And then I remember begging him for an apology when I was a kid, and he'd say backhanded apologies like, I'm sorry you misunderstood me. I'm sorry you remembered incorrectly. And then another sociopathic trait, interestingly enough, is running late. And when I heard that, which I've heard in several places, that was like a trait of a sociopath, is that they cannot be on time to anything. That makes sense, because they are basically telling you that your time isn't worth anything. Only their time's worth something. You can go fuck yourself. You can wait for me. So my dad had a lifelong issue with that. And after the divorce, he was, I was a 14-year-old kid, and he had visitation, so he'd come over and pick me up, and we'd go somewhere, a restaurant or something. And he'd say, okay, I'll be there at 2. And I'd sit and wait, and 2 o'clock rolls around, not here. 3 o'clock rolls around, not here. We didn't really have cell phones back then, so you just couldn't get a hold of them. 4 o'clock rolls around, not here. Sometimes he'd show up at 5 or 5:30. Just doesn't give a shit. And he's still like that to this day. He's still like that. To have a relationship with people like this is extremely difficult and challenging. He's not a nightmare all the time, but it still rears its ugly head. So like when my brother and his wife had their first child, the child is still little, and so my dad and his wife were like, oh, well, we'll come over, and, his wife she offered to cook for everyone. We'll come over and we'll cook for you. Isn't that great? Oh, we're so nice. We're so great. What time are you going to be here? 12. Okay. So I'm at my brother's house, and we're waiting for them and waiting, and they're an hour and a half late. And I felt so bad for my brother and his wife, because these are two new parents on minimal sleep. Like, these two are getting maybe 3 hours of sleep a night if they're lucky. All because my dad's got some obsession. He's a very underachieving but obsessive business person. Like, if he's not obsessing on it for 19 hours a day, then he's going to miss some critical thing. So he can't prioritize or do anything, but he's got to obsess over it. So everybody can wait. He's an hour and a half late, and then by the time his wife finishes cooking everything, now you're talking about 2.5 hours after the time when we were supposed to eat. So we've got all these rules set in place, which I had to establish. My brother kind of just shrugs his shoulders, but I established rules like, okay, no more of that. And what we do now is we meet at a restaurant. When he's 15 minutes late, when the clock is past 15 minutes, we order, whether he's there or not. If we finish eating by the time he gets there, before he gets there, then we pay and we leave. And that's worked out pretty well so far, because he's always late, doesn't care. He's always got a reason why he can't show up to things on time. That communicates that you're worthless. Like Bradshaw said, feeling worthless is a comparison. It's like, you're worth less than this, than my business, than whatever else I'm working on. So one time I left, I had waited an hour for him to show up, and I just went home. And he threw a hissy fit, said he would have he left me a message saying he would have appreciated a phone call or whatever. Well, I would appreciate if you not be an hour late to things. But anyway, the most abusive example that sticks out in my mind is when he came to get me once. So it was after the divorce again, so I was like 14, and he picked me up and went to his house, and my mom had some issues with me spending the night over there. Not that he was a molester or anything, because he wasn't, but just that he was weird, and she's probably rightfully concerned that I would spend too much time with him. So he'd pick me up and take me over there, and he didn't feel like driving me back home. So instead of being honest about it, like, I'm really tired and maybe, could you tell your mom to let you stay or something, he came up with this whole routine and act where what he was going to do, what he did do, is he pretended to start crying. It was all crocodile tears. It was all fake. And he literally, I was a 14-year-old kid, and he was in his, I don't know what, probably pushing 50 at that point. He literally put his head in my lap and started fake sobbing. That it was something like, I regret that I didn't spend enough time with my dad, and I don't want you to make the same mistake. And it was so sick. It was so sick because it wasn't genuine. He didn't really feel that way. He wasn't really crying. It was crocodile tears. It was all a manipulation. Because all sociopaths really care about are the results, what they want to do. Anything justifies that. There's no empathy. If it's fun for them, they do it. If it's fun for them to torture you, they find ways to torture you. If it's fun for them if they've got something better to do, then all they need is a good excuse for why they're late. They don't sit there like normal people like you and I and go, oh man, made my friend and made my relative feel really bad. I'm going to learn how not to be late anymore. I'm sorry, I'll fix it. It's like, no, well, all I need is a good excuse as to why I'm late, and then that makes it okay. Then I can just impose that on the other person. Because that's the unbalanced nature of it. They just live in their own heads, in their own reality. So all he needed to do was like, well, I don't feel like driving him back, so whatever I need to do to achieve that is A-okay. So I felt so violated. It felt so weird to have, like, I was a kid, a 14-year-old kid, and have my dad's head, like, fake sobbing in my lap. And I was like, all right, I'll stay. So hold on, it gets better, more exciting, right? So I didn't have any contact lens stuff, didn't have a toothbrush, Didn't have any soap, didn't have anything. He didn't have any of that stuff at his house. So now the contacts I had back in the day, I was brand new user contact lenses. Like they didn't have overnight lenses. You had to take them out. So I said to him, well, so after he stopped his routine, this is a 50-year-old man doing this. I said, well, I don't have any stuff. I don't have any toiletries. I don't have any stuff. Will you take me to the supermarket, which was right down the street, less than 5 minutes away? Will you take me to the supermarket and get me some things? Okay, so that he goes, that would have taken effort on his part. Effort. He doesn't want it. Whatever he had to do to get out of lifting a finger is what he's going to do. It's not like he had a job to go to. There was no pressing. It was a weekend. There was nothing. He had nothing to do. There was nothing going on. There's no reason why he couldn't do it, except that it's like his whole mentality is, how do I get out of things? Like, how do I get out of having to do stuff, whether it was raising us or doing family things when my parents were still together. It's like, well, how do I get out of doing these things so I can get back to self-indulging in whatever thing I wanted to do? Like maybe he wanted to jerk off or something, who knows? But he wouldn't do it. So after that whole routine, crocodile tears and all this drama to get me to agree, dirty tricks to get me to agree, emotional manipulation is what that is, right? Okay, so all right, I'll just stay. I'll just tell Mom that I'll stay, call her and tell her, and will you take me to the market to get me some stuff? And he said, you know what? This guy will take you. And basically what it was there was a homeless guy, literally a homeless guy, who was living in a van, parked at the side of the curb in front of his house. This is in the San Fernando Valley, and there's a homeless guy living there. And he said that this was a guy who he met that was doing odd jobs for him. He'd give him a couple bucks, and he'd do a little this, little that, run errands, because my dad, fancies himself an entrepreneur. So he says, just get in the van with him, and he'll take you. And I'm like, what? I don't know. Who is this stranger? Like, who is this guy? It's a disgusting, unshowered, unkept fucking bum. I mean, like, just the nastiest. Imagine just like the scariest fucking homeless guy in a van, living in a van on the curb, and he didn't call the city or anything to get rid of the guy because he let him be there to do odd jobs for him. And this was and so what I think it was like, this was something like, this is how this guy would earn some payment my dad gave him, or his keep somehow. He's got to delegate to somebody. So I climb in the van with this fucking homeless guy, and the door closes, and the homeless guy starts driving dangerously. Like, what he would do is he started whipping around corners and stuff and frightening me. And then when we got closer to the supermarket, he drove around the back of it. So you know how in the back of the supermarket there's a loading dock, and there were a bunch of like light posts, and he started like doing parkour shit, like more like slalom, like weaving in and out of them, coming really close to hitting them to try to scare me. And I'm like terrified, and he's like looking at me like trying to like get my reaction. He's trying to terrify me. So then he whips the van around the front of the market and parks, and he said, all right, go get what you got to get. So I have my little $20 bill there that my dad gave me because he couldn't spare 15 minutes of his life to take me, his son, to get stuff. So I go inside and I buy the shit, contact lens fluid and some face soap and whatever. Get my little bag and go back in the van. And then the homeless guy starts screaming at me that I was a rich kid, spoiled, quote unquote rich kid, and that he didn't grow up like a rich kid like me. So to him, probably a rich kid is a kid who grew up in a house, I guess, and not on the street. So that explained the whole parkour incident was he was trying to frighten me, that he felt some animosity against, some jealousy or animosity, against the fact that his perception was I was a rich kid, quote unquote rich kid, and he was gonna take it out on me. You see now why I have really no respect, and I don't feel sorry for poor people, really, because most of them, especially the socialists who buy into this victimology crap, because it's just blaming other people for your problems. And you don't have the balls to rob someone, so you're going to make the government do it for you, but you're not entitled to other people's money. And this is the mentality. This is why a guy like this is, in fact, homeless and stays homeless, because everything is somebody else's fault. Doesn't take responsibility for his pain or his parents and do his best with it. And, there's a homeless guy right out here. I drive by him every day. And he sits by the park. I drive by the park. And he always goes like this. Like, what's your problem? Why can't you help me? It's like, well, the problem is this is his job. This turns into that guy's job, right? Begging. So it is a mindset. It's a mentality. And a fair amount of, quite a bit of jealousy and animosity against anyone who has any more than you. And that's the crux of all Marxist socialist ideology, is this hatred and jealousy of anyone who might have anything that you don't have. That's why it always fails, right? Because it could apply to just anybody with more than you think you're entitled to. But anyway, digressing a bit. So this guy terrorized me, and he's screaming at me, being screamed at by a homeless stranger in a disgusting van while he's driving me home, calling me a rich kid, trying to invoke guilt and all that. So get back to my dad's house. And that fucking piece of shit's in his house doing nothing. What a great... You know what is so sick about all this is that all this stuff, he, to this day, and even then, he's convincing himself, I'm a great dad. Well, what a great dad I am. Such a great dad. Look what I did. Look what I did for my kid. I gave him a $20 bill. I arranged for him to have a ride to get what he needed. It got done. Look it. He's coming back with his little baggie. Look, it got done. What a great dad am I. So I got home and I told him, his house, and I told him what had happened, that this guy had drove erratically, frightened me, that I was scared. I was shaking from it, and he yelled at me and all this stuff. And he's like, oh, what? No, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that. No. I'll talk to him. So I saw him. He went out there and I watched it. It was like, oh, I guess you scared my kid a little bit. Ha, ha, ha. And the guys, ha, ha, ha. And they just were chummy about it. My dad stole from me. I remember, it was always around that time. I think after the divorce, I was making this concerted effort to have a relationship with him. I really felt I needed it because my mom was going off the deep end with the smothering and the enmeshment, especially after he left. Like, she really made it a point to really put her claws in me. 14, which was at a time when you should be developing and establishing more of that ego and that rebelliousness and independence, which I think is very healthy. So I was trying kind of a little too hard. I was too young to really know anything. My brother was a little older. He was 16, wanted nothing to do with him. He was like, I'm done with, but I wasn't mature enough to really be that rebellious at that stage. So I saw him, and he found some other woman to live off of. So I told him about this invention that I had. I was a smart kid. I had an idea for an invention. I told him all about it. And he's like, wow, that's great. That's great, Dev. Cool idea. Love it. Wow. Then the next weekend I saw him, he stole the idea. He was starting to tell me about the invention that he had, that he thought of. And I'm sitting there going, that's my idea. I told you about that last weekend. Gaslighting comes in. No, what? He goes, what? No. I said, yes, I did. I was I was sitting right here. I remember exactly where it was to this day. It was at the gym. He was walking on the treadmill in the gym where his girlfriend lived, where he had moved in with her. And he was in there, and I was just talking to him, and he was on the treadmill. And I told him about the idea. And so I reminded him. I said, well, you were on the treadmill, and I told you about my idea. No, I don't remember that. That didn't happen. I was walking on the beach. I had the idea, and I was walking on the beach. So, again, sociopath. The truth doesn't matter. There's no integrity. There's no integrity to the truth. Just if I can convince you, then I'm not in trouble. If I can convince you, then I'm not in trouble. Then it's no harm, no foul because you didn't catch me. It's kind of that it's only illegal if I get caught kind of mentality, although, I don't think it's quite the same. It doesn't quite apply in the same way because morality and legality are not exactly the same. Like, yeah, I'm a libertarian, so you can put whatever you want to your body, even if it's illegal or not. It doesn't make it immoral, I don't think. But this is about honor between family members. So, I hope I'm not the only one. I feel like the only one sometimes, but what John Bradshaw would say is he hears this all the time, like, "Oh, my family wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad." You got to get some years under your belt to look back at it and the problems that you have, and you have to own those problems, addiction, depression, whatever it is, I think, and go, that just doesn't come from poor self-image. That doesn't come from nowhere. You think you're born that way? Really? Like, you think you're born with a low self-esteem and thinking you're a piece of crap? No, that has to get into your head somehow. That's why I love Scientology documentaries. I love the Leah Remini show and about that, and the documentaries about it and how crazy it is, because it is like that. It's like being brought up in a cult-like environment with a distorted reality system. And you have to break free of that by knowing that it was like put into your head by somebody else. It's not the real you. There are these, especially when it comes to masculinity and like me expressing it and like being okay to be a guy, like that doesn't just happen where you have anxiety around that or issues with that. I had a role that I was expected to play, and that came with a bunch of definitions, right? That my family was happy to impose on me. Like, you're the runt, you're a goof, you're no good, you're laughable, you're silly, you don't get to live that life. A lot of put down so that my brother and my dad could feel better about themselves. Jealousy, which you have to come to terms with. A lot of times your self-esteem so battered, you don't think, no one would be jealous of me. Why would anyone be jealous of me? But actually that happens quite a bit, especially if you had a overly close relationship with your mom. And in this case, my dad is very jealous of that. He didn't, of course, him being the narcissist, he wouldn't do some self-reflection, which narcissists cannot do, and say, oh, well, I got to fix a relationship with my wife. Ask her what she needs of me. Change. They can't do that. So sadly, like this business of my dad and his self-absorbed nonsense, like, it still triggers me a little bit to this day. Because I live in Arizona now. He's in California. And for the last 3 years, every week, he's been saying, I'm going to come see you one day. I'm going to come see you. I'm thinking of it. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking of maybe doing it. And so this last time, finally said, you've been saying that for 3 years. He goes, I know, but I'm still going to do it. So the next time is actually the next boundary is going to be that he's not to mention that anymore. Let's say, Dad, give me a call when you're on your way, because that'll never happen. But he's blocked. So how do I deal with it? Well, if your parents are bad enough, you can cut them off entirely. I've been there with all my family members, really, at one point or another in time. But you might be asking yourself, why not? It's like, well, because things have improved quite a bit since I was a kid. a lot of times these dads, when you get a little older, when they get older, a lot of the wind goes out of their sails. They just can't. They either don't have the energy to be that abusive anymore, and the old age mellows them out. And I think it's a combination of that and the fact that they just can't get away with it anymore. You're an adult. Like, I'd fucking, he'd be, lots changed since then. I don't have to have a relationship with him unless I want to. So it's very tempered. It's very measured. He's blocked on my phone. So that means that I call them, my mom and my dad, I call them when I feel like it. I don't see their number coming because a lot of weird shit happens when my dad just calls spontaneously and I answer, and he's abused that privilege. So there was a couple feigned suicide attempts. This is going back not that long, actually, really in the last 5 years, where he had another attention getting incident, where he married some gold digger because he had made that money, and then when that started to run out, because he blows it all on stupid crap and failed ideas and is irresponsible. So the gold diggers tend to leave when things like that happen. So he feigned an attention-getting suicide attempt where he swallowed half a bottle of Klonopin or whatever. But the thing is, how do I know it was feigned and attention-getting? Because he's been abusing that shit his whole life. He knows exactly how much he can take. My doctor told me that it's really hard to kill yourself on that shit. Like, it's almost impossible. You basically, because I told my doctor this story about it, and he said, yeah, it's really tough to kill yourself on that stuff, because you overload your receptors for it, and then you just knock yourself out. You sleep for a long time. You wake up feeling like shit, which is what happened. So he called and he left this voicemail about how he tried to take his life, and he uses me as his emotional tampon all the time, and I just got tired of it. So what happens now is, he's blocked, so he leaves a message. He has a cool-off period because everything changes. In 48 hours, he hates his wife and he's going to kill himself, and then 48 hours later, they're made up. Or he's got an emergency, or he needs emergency business advice, and that's just to get attention. And then 48 hours from then, he's changed his mind and he's on to something else. So that works out pretty well for me. My mom, it's the same way. But with her, it's just cuts back on the triggering because she was so intrusive and abusive and had her little nose up my a-hole about every single blessed thing. Like, she'd burst in my room without knocking and go through all my papers. Like, I have stories about how intrusive and violating she was. And so, I think I see it as a part of self-care. Just like I don't get that reaction when the phone number pops up. It goes to voicemail. Every once in a while, I check the voicemail. I give her a call back when I have control over it. And it's just, it's very, I maybe you don't agree with my way of doing things. It's just, I think we all have to find ways of drawing boundaries and coping with people like this. Just last year, so my dad's in his mid-70s. It was the first time he ever asked me for money. So he spent all his money, and I gave it to him because, hey, when I was in my 20s, he gave me money, and past then, he'd always been pretty generous, actually, with helping with money. But with him, it's like that's how he gets out of having to spend time with his family. Is, well, I'm a great dad because I sent you money, so I don't have to spend Christmas with you or do anything, holidays or whatever, because I gave you money. There, done. And so that's his way of kind of buying it, but still was generous. So my brother and I did it the one time, but I probed into whether he's getting Social Security or not. Turns out he is. So no more after that. But he's got a whole system of payback and you owe me's and things like that. But the thing about a sociopathic and narcissistic father is you can't argue with them about anything because they're never going to accept responsibility and they're always going to win. So, like, I had the surgery. I had a very painful gastrointestinal surgery about 3 years ago, and he didn't come visit me. He lived very close. He didn't come say hi, see how I was doing. It was just that distancing behavior, like from afar, and I was upset by that. So I said, well, it would have been nice if you come see me. And he had an immediate oh, well, you didn't come see me this one time, and I was like, when didn't I come see you? So he had concocted some reason or some way of assuring himself that he was right to not see me because he didn't want to. And it was kind of nonsense, because whenever he's been admitted to the hospital, I always go and see him. But he has a lot of false alarms. So he'd always call for false alarms with this, again, narcissistic expectation of, when are you going to drop what you're doing and rush down here to wait in the waiting room at the ER to prove that you love me? There's no respect for my schedule. And then, now, usually, you probably should do that, but the problem with him is it was like every other week. And much of the time, you would sit there for like 4 hours, all day. You'd be sitting there in the waiting room. Doctor would say, well, you're fine. Get out of here. And that happened a lot. He'd have angina and things like that, and a lot of times it was a false alarm. So I said to him at that time, I said, well, I'm not just going to rush down there to sit in the waiting room to prove to you that I love you. Like, you should know that I love you, and if you get admitted, if the doctor admits you, then let me know, and I'll be right down. This is like the game that they play, and his mother was that way too. Like, it's a contest. Prove to me. I'm going to cry wolf. The sky's falling. I'm going to cry wolf, and now you got to prove to me how much you're going to gush over me. So that was, when he had a stent put in, I went down and I saw him, of course, because that was like, oh no, this is legit. Doctor says I need a stent. All right, well, when you going in for surgery? Now, okay. So that evening, I went down to Santa Monica Hospital, and I saw him and made sure he was okay and visited with him because he got admitted. But he remembered the one time when I didn't rush down to the ER and used that as the excuse to not visit me when I was recovering from a gastrointestinal surgery nightmare. It took like 2 weeks just to get up and walk around my apartment. So, narcissists are not capable of caring about other people, so you should not expect anything of them. So when my cousin died, he came up with these reasons of why he had a beef with his nephew and didn't show up to the funeral. And then the day of the funeral, he left some message on everybody's phone about how he wasn't feeling well. I'm not feeling well, so I have to stay home. This kind of thing. So I'm just saying, quit fighting for love from narcissists, because you ain't going to get any. It's a lost cause. You have to learn how to look out for numero uno in this world and be who you need to be. And just, sadly, if you had a narcissistic parent, those are the cards you were dealt. He inherited this from his mother. That was my grandma. I didn't speak to her for the last 10 years of her life because it was so bad. She's about 10 times worse than he was, but that's who he got it from. So some are just too hot to handle. Some are, like my dad, my mom now, they're okay most of the time. There are some things that happen that, I need to erect the boundaries when I need to. But you cannot expect them. There's one thing that they both have in common, which is that you cannot talk to them about their behavior at all, which is an effort to improve the relationship. Like, if you just didn't care, you wouldn't say anything. But if I care, I said, well, Mom, this thing that you did, when you infantilized me back there, that was kind of not cool. It's not I didn't do that. It was you're wrong. I would never do anything like that. Everything's very defensive and very personal. My father's the same way. So you don't expect shit from them. You don't expect anything. And distancing is the only thing you can really do. And you might say, well, that's really sad that I have to cut them off or block their number or only talk to them once every month or whatever. But if they would listen to you, that would be one thing. But they don't listen, they don't learn, they don't care, and they don't change. You're talking about the most selfish creatures on earth. Like, other people's thoughts and feelings do not mean shit anymore. You're not really a person. You're just kind of like, I like to say it's like a puppet. Other people are kind of like puppets that act like they have feelings, but they really don't. So I think like we need more humility in our culture, and more empathy and more understanding. And now everything's an excuse for people to beat up on each other. Someone has a different political belief than you, or is conservative. Well, then they're evil. Beat them up. Imagine, like what it's like for me. Like, I've told you all I can. It takes a lot for me, honestly, to tell you, open up about all these things. Like that, this is where I come from. All these issues that affect the core of your being, having your masculinity assaulted on all these levels, and having a fucking whack job as a dad, irregular, crazy person, and a depressive narcissist as a mom, and smothering, and to walk around and be told that you're a white male, that you're privileged, and have these young people jeering and just like I hear it in casual conversation all the time. White privilege, like. I love what Jordan Peterson said. Like, you don't know me. You don't know what this guy's been through. Like, we have to treat each other as individuals instead of this identity politics crap, which blankets people, puts them into buckets, where you start saying, well, this category of person is so privileged. Let me invent the ways. Let me invent the ways in which you're privileged. And when I voice objection, people can't believe it. They can't believe you just expected. Yeah, you're right. I'm a bad white. You're right. I lost a relationship very recently. My personal trainer and his girlfriend. So my personal trainer is this really nice black kid. He's like 25, super cool guy, very enterprising, like business owner, hates victim culture, hates all that crap. Super cool guy. And his girlfriend at the time, now they've broken up because he got sick of her crap. But his girlfriend's this, I guess she was Iraqi, American born, but I guess Iraqi. And she was totally cool. Like, we have a good relationship and all that. But every once in a while, she goes on an anti-white people routine. And she was also a personal trainer. So sometimes when my guy friend, when he wasn't available to train because he had other business activities, he'd have to fly around and do it. Then she would train me. Because she knew all the routines and stuff, all different bodybuilding routines, whatever. And before our training, she went on this anti-Caucasian rampage, fucking white people this, and have all this privilege. I said, hey, that's not cool. I was like, hey, you got to watch it with that. Watch it with that. And she had a warning. She did it again, so I quit. So I'm not going to train with you guys anymore. So boyfriend came in, did damage control. She wouldn't own up to it. She's like, no, he's wrong. This narcissism. And I just got through telling you about a guy who was a total rampaging hot narcissist, which was my father. So I'm not saying all women are narcissists. I'm just saying that it's becoming increasingly common and with women today. And I think the reason why is because, there is such a thing as healthy humility. And when women are not being raised with that, what's a guy? Guys don't, guy's a blip on your cell phone. Someone who is a sex beggar is not a real person with parents and feelings and whatever. So men suck, and white men especially suck, and they're not entitled to any empathy. So the problem is cultural as well, but just know you're not alone with this narcissistic parents thing, or sociopathic parents. Hope you got a lot out of this, and have a great day.